Welcome to the Geek, the History Geek. I'm Mr. Hodges. Being a student of history has taught me one thing about the United States of America. We truly love the story of the underdog, the scrappy fighter fighting for something bigger than themselves and fighting to survive. This is not surprising since, in a way, this is our story, fighting to become our own nation. Needless to say, we are interested in stories similar to our own. This is definitely true regarding one of our own 50 states. Before joining us, it had become its own country. That state is Texas. We're going to explore what led to the settlement of Texas and to the conditions and conflict that led to Texas breaking away from Mexico. Stay with me as we explore this fascinating topic. Following the conquering of Mexico by Spain in 1521, the region was explored, settled, and controlled by soldiers known as conquistadors, missionaries, and Spanish settlers. There were many areas that were arid and not as desirable for settlement. One of these areas was the land north of the Rio Grande called Tejas. This name derived from the Caddo natives of that region and came from the word teya, meaning friend or ally. Settlement in the region was not popular for many reasons. Being along the extreme edge of the frontier, it was not well protected. This made settlements vulnerable to attacks by the many warlike Native American tribes of the region. Travel to the region for trade goods and people was also difficult due to the poor roads and the need to travel across a vast, arid, desert-like region. Because of this, the Spanish were only able to have 3 permanent settlements be successful in the region. The first was San Antonio de Bejar, founded in 1718. La Bahia, later known as Joliad, founded in 1749. And finally, Nacogdoches, founded in 1779. The Spanish, like many of the European colonizers of the New World, began exploiting the natural resources of Mexico for their benefit. They imposed slavery on both the native peoples of Mexico and on Africans imported into the region to be the labor force for these resources. They also imposed strict religious and social rules and only allowed persons of pure-blood Spanish to rule. When combined with the poverty and poor treatment of the lower classes and the slaves, this led to tensions building over the years. In 1810, these tensions exploded and the Mexican Revolution finally began, and after more than 10 years of fighting, 300 years of Spanish rule was ended with the signing of the Treaty of Cordoba in 1821. This established the country of Mexico under a constitutional monarchy. However, 18 months later, this government would be removed and a constitutional republic would begin following the establishment of the Mexican Constitution of 1824. Following the overthrow of Spain and the ending of the revolution, the new Mexican government began to realize the many problems facing them. One of these was how to secure its vast lands and far-flung borders. One of the most critical was the border along the rapidly growing United States. The failed Spanish efforts to settle this region had left very few settlers to defend the region from the many hostile Native American tribes and from possible encroachment of the Mexican border by the U.S. in the future. With the creation of the new Mexican Constitution in 1824, the Mexican government began creating new immigration policies. This led to the State Colonization Law of 1825, which was created to, and I quote, encourage the tilling of the soil and the growth of ranches and to facilitate commerce, end quote. The new immigration policies gave foreign immigrants that would settle in Coahuila y Tejas the possibility of becoming a citizen of Mexico. Under the law, the Mexican government allowed each province to be responsible for the administration of Mexican policies. To encourage immigration, Coahuila y Tejas created the empresario system, which hired people to be official agents for Coahuila y Tejas for the purpose of recruiting settlers to the region. Each empresario was required to recruit at least 100 families, and if this was done, they could earn up to 22,142 acres of land. For every additional 100 families, up to 800, they could earn an additional 886 acres, or a maximum of 7,088 acres of bonus land. In addition, the empresarios were also responsible for organizing a school or schools to teach the Spanish language, build a Catholic church and recruit a priest, and more importantly, they were responsible for the survey and issue of the title for land for the immigrants recruited. For immigrants to Coahuila y Tejas, there were several requirements. First of all, Mexican settlers and empresarios were considered first and had first choice of any land. All Mexican and foreign immigrants had to agree to follow the federal and state constitutions of Mexico. They were required to show good conduct and sound moral principles, as well as being required to be Catholic and to worship regularly. If they accepted these terms, they would be allowed to enter Tejas, and they could receive up to 4,428 acres of land for grazing and an additional 177 acres for farming for a small payment. They would be temporarily free of all taxes, and after 10 years, if they were in good standing, they could become Mexican citizens. Some of the most famous impresarios were Moses and Stephen Austin, Samuel May Williams, Green DeWitt, Martin de Leon, and Erasmo Seguin. Moses Austin, and upon his death, Stephen Austin, were among the first impresarios to be given a colony in Coahuila y Tejas. They were able to recruit 300 families in Tejas from the southern U.S. These families are known as the Old 300. Being primarily of British ancestry, they established an Anglo-American colony. This group was already well established prior to coming to Tejas, and they brought substantial wealth and also slaves with them when they settled. Settlement of the region was rapid, and by 1835, over 35,000 settlers lived in Tejas. Gradually, issues began to build between the new settlers and the Mexican government. In 1823, with the beginning of the Mexican Republic, Mexico forbade the sale or purchase of enslaved people, and they also required any enslaved people to be freed at the age of 14. Initially, Coahuila y Tejas had granted an exception to the bringing in of slaves for the settlers entering Tejas, but eventually even Coahuila y Tejas would ban any further enslaved people from being brought in, and they also supported the granting of freedom at birth to any child of an enslaved person. In May of 1828, they did, however, agree to allow the Anglo-American colonists to bring in permanently indentured servants. Several events would happen that would cause tension to begin to build between Mexico and their recent immigrant colonists. The first of these would be the abolishment of slavery in Mexico in 1829. Despite the change of status to permanently indentured, many of these settlers knew it was only a matter of time till they would lose their workforce and property. The Mexican government had also had growing concerns about Coahuila y Tejas. Many government officials had noted that the new settlers were either unable or refused to learn to speak Spanish, and many, likely due to Protestant backgrounds, refused to convert to Catholicism. The growing presence of slavery and the insistence on keeping slavery despite Mexican laws was also an increasing concern. There were also increasing concerns due to the settlers starting to influence Mexican citizens of Tejas, especially on issues regarding representation and Tejas statehood. To address these concerns, they passed the law of April 6, 1830. The law did the following. It stopped all Anglo-American immigration from the U.S. This upset many of the current colonists because their families and friends could not join them in Tejas now. To limit additional settlement, it canceled all unfulfilled impresario grants. Immigrants from Mexico from Europe were encouraged, and they banned the importation of any enslaved people with these immigrants. To limit trade and connections with the U.S., it placed custom duties on all U.S.-made goods entering Tejas from the United States. The Mexican government also encouraged greater military occupation of the region and began establishing forts to stop illegal immigration, to protect the border from encroachment, and to enforce the customs taxes. These actions really concerned and angered the recent immigrants and created further tensions that would lead toward future conflict. With the abolishment of the Mexican Constitution of 1824 and the rise of Santa Anna de Lopez to power as a dictator, and in 1835 with the centralizing of control under the national government, This would seriously concern the Anglo-American settlers of Texas. This conflict would lead towards a Texas Revolution and the eventual creation of the independent Republic of Texas. But that will be another video in the future. So now you know a little bit about the history of the settlement of early Texas and how this would lead to the conflict between the Texians and Mexico. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I encourage you to share what you've learned with the people you know. As always, if you like this video, I would encourage you to share it with others. And please vote for more history by giving it a like. This simple act can really help the channel out with the YouTube algorithm. I want to take a moment to thank all the people who have supported the channel by subscribing. Thank you. I would also like to urge new viewers or those that have not yet subscribed to please do so. It is free and something that is no cost to you. Be sure to click on the bell to receive all push notifications for future videos. Remember, my friends, there's a lot more fascinating history left to explore. With that in mind, remember to take some time to explore some of the past videos on the History Geek Did You Know channel. I know that you will learn some very interesting historical facts. Well, that's all for now. So until the next time when I ask the question, did you know? I am Mr. Hodges, and this is the History Geek.